once a man and a woman who had longed in vain wished for a child. At length the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day the woman was standing by this window and looked down into the garden, when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, Rapunzel, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat some. The desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and looked pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What aileth thee, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some of that rampion, which is in the garden behind our house, to eat, I shall die." The man who loved her thought, "Sooner than let their wife die, bring her some of the rampion thyself, let it cost thee what it will." In the twilight of evening, he clambered down over the wall into the garden of the enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion, and took it to his wife. She at once made herself a salad of it, and ate it with much relish. She, however, liked it so much, so very much, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of evening, therefore, he let himself down again, but when he had clambered down the wall, he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How canst thou dare," she said with an angry look, "to descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? Thou shalt suffer for it." "Ah," he answered, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window, and felt such a longing for it that she could have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened, and said to him, "If the case be as thou sayest, I will allow thee to take away with thee as much rampion as thou wilt. Only I will make one condition. Thou must give me the child which thy wife will bring into the world." "It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child beneath the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower, which lay in a forest, and had neither 1,000 braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window. And when the king's son came and cried, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down thy hair, she let the hair down. The king's son ascended, but he did not find his dearest Rapunzel above, but the enchantress gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks. "Aha!" she cried mockingly, "thou wouldst fetch thy dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the impatiently. I wish your neck was broken. Directly he had said the word, down the horse fell on the ground, and there it lay dead, and never moved again. And thus was his first wish fulfilled. And he was miserly by nature, and he did not like to leave the harness lying there, so he cut it off and put it on his back, and now he had to go on foot. I have still 2 wishes left, he said, and comforted himself with that thought. And now, as he was walking slowly through the sand, and the sun was burning hot at noonday, he grew quite hot-tempered and angry. The saddle hurt his back, and he had not yet any idea what to wish for. If I were to wish for all the riches and treasures in the world, said he to himself, I should still think of all kinds of things beside later on. I know that beforehand, but I will manage so that there is nothing at all left me to wish for afterwards. Then he sighed and said, Ah, if I were but the Bavarian peasant, who likewise had 3 wishes granted to him, and knew quite well what to do, and in the first place wished for a great deal of beer, and in the second for as much beer as he was able to drink, and in the third for a barrel of beer into the bargain. Many a time he thought he had found it, but then it seemed to him to be, after all, too little. Then it came into his mind what an easy life his wife had, for she stayed at the home in a cool room and enjoyed herself. This really did vex him, and before he was aware, he said, I just wish she was sitting there on this saddle and could not get off it, instead of my having to drag it along on my back. And as the last word was spoken, the saddle disappeared from his back, and he saw that his second wish had been fulfilled. Then he really did feel warm, began to run and wanted to be quite alone in his own room at home, to think of something really large for his last wish. But when he arrived there and opened the parlour door, he saw his